appoint the arbitrators and to stay the litigation in the interim. The village cross-moved to stay our request for the arbitration, wanting to continue the litigation. So it's a lot of legalese, but basically we want arbitration, the village does not, and Judge Sloboda is going to have to make a ruling as to whether or not the agreement does in fact compel or call for arbitration. It's an interesting legal concept, but without going into a long dissertation, we'll see what the response is.
It's up to the judge.
Correct. That's what we're proposing at the present time.
Okay, well, thank you.
I think it would be great argument to the client wants to wait, but I think it made it quite clear how the town board stands on the issue.
Yes, the Chronicle article was published too.
Made it quite, public relations wise, made it quite clear that what this board said.
Right, which now the board's aware that the village has always contended that it's not final in terms of arbitration, because one side could appeal, one side could contest the decision, which that's always true in any factor until you get to the Supreme Court of the United States, and your remedies are exhausted. But Doug, I know, has publicly spoken for the board and said on numerous occasions that win, lose, or draw, the board would abide by the finding in arbitration. And just as an aside, for your own edification, where I think this is going to turn on, if you remember the language of our agreement, it refers to the fact that any dispute or question of interpretation, Commissioner of Health. The village is arguing that the dominant intention of that paragraph is that anything has to go to the Commissioner of Health. Whereas I'm arguing that the dominant intention of that paragraph is the arbitration. The Commissioner of Health is just a facilitator or a convenience. Because again, we've had the same agreement for 50 years. We've never had to use it. The Commissioner, in her own declination statement, said, I find it interesting that I've never been contacted or even inquired as to whether I would be willing to serve. So for anybody to argue that the dominant feature of the paragraph is that it's got to be done by the Commissioner of Health, that's ridiculous. But you never know how a judge is going to rule. Historically, you go back when this first started, like in the 60s with Hamiltonian Park, the Department of Health was very important to the expansion of these sewer districts. They monitored them. That's why I'm sure they came up with the Commissioner of Health. But you never know how a judge is going to go, and we'll see.
You are right. They were the intricate part of the sewer district. It made sense to have them be involved with the arbitration because they were, that's their world.
Now it's involved with so much more.
They're all black.
Exactly.
Now it's not.
And I will say this on Duncan's behalf. Talking to him about the litigation and again this motion and all, we both agree that unfortunately it's probably a waste of money. And he also mentioned that today, again, I don't want to get involved too much in procedure, but simply put, as Doug knows, when our motion went in, it went in with what they call an affirmation or affidavit from him. When they opposed us, I have the right to reply to that, so I put in a reply affirmation in opposition to their cross motion and in support of our motion. Donovan today just issued a letter to the court telling them, look, it's the same issue whether the town is moving to compel arbitration or we're trying to stay arbitration. So the village's submission, should stand for both motions, the original motion and the cross motion. I mean, I'm not going to reprint, redo, respend, re-exercise costs. So in his, not defense, but he could have engendered a whole other proceeding. Again, the question who gets the last say. Exactly. So, because we tried, I tried to keep to a minimum as far as cost and exposure.
By not doing
legal skirmish.
Has he done anything to compromise his actual legal?
No, not at all. No, in fact, the case is really interesting. In other words, you have to appreciate how attorneys work, think, and what they support. You cite it to case law and precedent as to what a particular issue might stand for or interpretation or ruling. And a lot of the same cases are being cited by both sides, different propositions. meaning they're arguing for the dominant intention, be it the naming or the auxiliary naming of an individual or whatnot. So it'll be interesting. I'll see how the judge handles it. And, I'm comfortable if what you ask for no. You never know. The more litigation you get into, the more you find that what you think is important is irrelevant to the judge, and what you think is irrelevant to the judge is like, I'm going to decide on that basis.
You think it's bad, not necessarily.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, Joel. I
Good.
didn't know you were there.
I was just going to ask you to repeat it if it was important to you that it was on the video, because I had a changeover on the memory card.
No, it's more edification.
But I think you've spelled it out.
Yeah. I just wanted to understand
Okay.
where we are.
Well, thank you very much. The next item is, we talked in our last meeting, we've got 3 requests or 4 requests now to extend the amount of time that applicants have pursuant to local law 4, number 4 of 2009. This is by developers that we had put in the law who could be under the old code. And so in our last meeting we talked about, well, maybe we need to sit and discuss the criteria upon which you're going to evaluate, because I'm going to, in the next week or two, have these applicants come before us and hear what they've got to say, and so we're not arbitrary. We say, okay, well, here's the criteria. So I'd ask Dennis to kind of lead us through this, if he could, to develop that criteria.
Yeah. What you're going to have to do, and I've already embarked on it, we need a status from the planning board as to where these applications are. I'll tell you why in a second. But basically, as the board indicated when we granted the first extension, it was based upon activity or good faith effort to develop the project and whatnot. And it becomes a question of, from the board's perspective, whether you want to equate intellectual submission or accomplishment with physical, because these applications are different. And meaning, to give you, tick them off, to my knowledge, status presently. For instance, Traskus has the cricket frog issue. Right. Now, where they are or to what study level, I don't know. This is, again, it's just the nature of the beast in the sense that we don't do these applications. So I have to get a report from the planning board, where they are with that, how much they've done, if anything, I couldn't tell you. But if you notice, Traskus is a study environmental concern as opposed to a physicality or even legal concept. Feeney is more physical. Feeney has done a lot in terms of infrastructure. We even started on a couple of houses, to my knowledge. And then you've got the third one presently, where we have a request from Zelensky. Now, Zelensky is phased. Okay, they have phase 1, 2, and 3. Phase 1, I believe, is very active, or was active to the point of infrastructure cuts or planning, physicality. 2 and 3, I don't think anything has been done.
I don't see it in phase 1.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, I've got to get a particular status from the plan. I requested the planning board attorneys to give me a status so the board can digest that by Thursday of this week. Because if you notice, you've got everything from a lot of physical work, Feeney, to almost no physical work, Traskus, but they're doing studies, I assume. And maybe, just maybe, Zelensky falls in between. For some reason, I thought phase 1 they had done a great deal. I could be wrong.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I go out by there once in a while. I don't see anything.
So criteria, just for your own thinking purposes, you're going to have to start to consider as to how much credence you want to give to, like, environmental studies. Because if they're required, they have to be done. You can't accomplish anything until such time as they are done. Again, Traskus. Zelensky, I just don't know, without more definitional terms from the planning board as to what they've done and where they've gone. Yeah, discussion.
You know, the way I see this thing, you have to tell us the safe, more conservative way to go. Each of the subdivisions, they have different issues. We've allowed them a certain amount of time. I know the nature of the environment, the financial environment. I mean, I'm sure they're battling other things than philosophical. I'm sure they're trying to get money and so on and so forth. And of course, that's my area, and I know how difficult it is. So there's a myriad of problems that these guys are dealing with. I want to be fair. what I tried to do is figure out if there is another extension, okay, let's just say we discuss 6 months, a 6-month extension, to have them get their house in order. What